Welcome to the CXPod, where we aim to expand people's perception of customer experience management. We know that customer experience goes hand in hand with employee experience, and we believe that a broader and more holistic view might even replace terms like CX and EX with people experience or human experience.
Hello and welcome to the CXPod. Today we have an amazing guest all the way from over there. It's the US. You are situated in Dallas. Welcome, Diane. And I have to say, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Magers? Magers? How?
Sure, Magers, but it's got
Magers.
a European spelling. So I just say, however you want to, whatever you want to call me is good.
So it's Magers. So Magers.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have asked that before. I just realized, but hey, this is the CXPod.
This is how we roll.
This is how we roll.
We certainly do. And welcome, Diane. We're thrilled that you're joining us today. Hi, Maretta, and welcome to everybody listening.
Yes, to our guests. Yeah, I'm excited to be here and excited to have this conversation and share a little bit about lessons learned and perspective. I know I always love to listen to other people and just learn from them. So I hope this is helpful for them too.
Yeah, and hopefully we can do that for other people as well today. So, and I just have to say, I mean, Diane, I think everyone who's into CX, across Norway, the Nordics, Europe, the world, at some point, I think they must, if they haven't heard your name, even if I didn't know how to pronounce it, if they haven't read it or seen it on LinkedIn, or they must have been down a rabbit hole. So it's great to have you. It's a true honor, and it's obviously for our little pod from this little country all the way up north. It's quite cool that we get to talk to so experienced and forward-leaning people within the field. Yeah. So thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
And you have also agreed to take on our question challenge. I keep saying 13 question challenge. We sort of skipped a few questions. If people have noticed, they have noticed correctly. But we kept the most valuable ones. So should we just get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, because the first question is really, who is Diane? So if anyone haven't heard of you, who are you?
Well, I don't know. I wish somebody would tell me that sometimes. I am a practitioner and now an advisor in experience. So I didn't start in this field. Everybody always asks me, how did you get here? It's like total serendipity. Nothing was really planned. I worked as a clinical psychologist. A lot of people don't know that about me, which is still human behavior, right? So I'm still in the same field. But took a break from that and went to work for an entrepreneurial company. 4 years later, we had 400 employees. So I was just hooked, and my boss there wanted everything to be about experience. So that's where I learned it. But it wasn't a profession back then. This is 1994, right? Nobody really had heard of it. We were doing surveys and things, but all by paper. So I've been in this a long time. I worked as a practitioner at Cisco Foods, an $80 billion food distribution company here in the States, and at AT&T in their Office of the Customer for their business solutions as a practitioner. But I've worked in and with many other organizations, advising, coaching. People just call me up and say, hey, I need help. I'm stuck. So it's one of my pleasures is to help mentor and guide people. And then 4 years ago now, I was for 3 years the CEO for the CXPA. I'd been a member and on the board, and then was blessed to do that for the organization, and really learned so much in that tenure about all the practices and people. And a little bit about me. I am in Dallas. I have 4 grown children, 23 to 32. One just got married 2 weeks ago. And my husband of 40 plus years now, who I've known since kindergarten.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And congratulations with the wedding of your child a couple of weeks ago.
My youngest got married. That's that time. Yeah. We were talking about that. It's like, where did that time go? Yeah. So that's about me.
But I think, if you've been married for 40 years plus, a thing or two about relationships and humans as well, I suppose, and how to nurture. And so I think that's always a good proof that, you're talking to somebody with people skills if they manage to stay married for that long, at least happily. So we're not I'm not going to delve into that.
Diane, you have such a wealth of experience behind you. And before I ask you a little bit about your expertise, you also mentioned CXPA. And I think perhaps not all of our listeners know what CXPA is. I wonder if you could just sort of mention that quickly.
Thank you for that. This just rolls off the tongue, and I forget there's people who do it. So in 2011, when all of us were kind of floundering and trying to find other people who were doing this work, Bruce Temkin and Jean Bliss started a nonprofit association for CX practitioners, because there wasn't anything around for us to learn from others. And the organization was founded on the premise of for us, by us. So by members, for members. So the sharing, the knowledge, I need to talk to somebody who's not crazy. I think I'm crazy, but maybe if I talk to somebody else, I'm not. That's really what it came to be. So there's resources. We're about 4,000 strong, hired our full-time CEO in 2019, Greg Melia. And it's a great place for people to go and learn and share and be a part of a community.
Yeah, and actually CXPA was my first sort of meeting with the professional CX world. Even in Norway, we had Janneke Drangertvering, who's been our guest twice, actually, once when we did the Norwegian episodes, and she's also attended the question challenge. And she was one of the first, I think, in Norway to take on the CXPA journey here. And I actually participated in one of the events, and that's how I got to know Janneke, actually. And now we're part of the Norwegian CX network. So
yeah,
the world isn't that big within the CX.
No, it's a small group of people, and most people know each other. And if you don't, you're going to get embraced anyway. That's what I always say about CX. It's almost funny to go to our conferences for CXPA because people who want to do things for other people, like we just follow over each other to help. And that's the great thing about this profession too, is when I think about if I need something or I have a question or I'm struggling with something, there are always people who are more than willing to help, giving me presentations. Here's a tool. It's just a very giving community. So we're really blessed to have that.
Yeah, I agree fully with you. Diane, can you share a little bit more with us about what you would say your expertise is within the whole realm of customer experience?
I love that. I'm reading a book right now called Range, which is about the range of skill sets people need to have, that they need to be broad generalists, but focus on a few things and be in depth there. So ironically, this is kind of a weird discussion. I told you I have an MS in clinical psychology, but I also have an MBA. So I'm that weirdo that can kind of do left brain, right brain. And when I think about expertise that I have, one of the things I really love is design and innovation. Like it just resonates with me. Maybe it's my creative side, I don't know, but so I've spent a lot of time really honing that skill and helping people to figure out design doesn't belong to the designer sitting in the corner. It belongs to everybody, because everybody's changing things all the time. And if you're not designing it, you're not, building it the way that it needs to be built to meet human needs. The other side is the business value, the ROI. The only reason that's the case, if you knew me, you'd be like, that seems weird. The only case is because when I worked at Cisco, it was a supply chain company. And if I couldn't drop a penny to the bottom line, I wasn't going to have a job. So I went to meet my CFO. I got my MBA. I decided I was going to make this part of my quest to be able to say, we can put dollars against the projects we're doing and the impact that we're having, and really talk about that ROI. So there you go, left brain, right brain, and two things I love to talk about.
Can I ask you a question in that regards? And already we're off topic and, diving into the rabbit holes, but we've talked a little bit about, there's an expression, and I think the first one who mentioned it to us was a Norwegian woman who works within HR really, but with the human experience and the employee experience. And she talks about the COI, so the cost of inaction. Is that something that you think is applicable? Because we've talked about it so many times, and I would just love to have your take on that as well. Like, if you don't do anything, what's that going to cost you versus the ROI that's sort of more...
Yeah, and we have a lot of examples. If you think about the Fortune 500 right now is shifting. People are rolling off and on. Those people who have not moved fast enough for consumers, who have found themselves irrelevant, because they haven't kept up with what the needs and expectations are. Those people who cannot hire and are hiring aren't able to hire the best talent, aren't making it because they haven't created a great employee experience. So we see the evidence. If you think about it, we see that if you don't do these things and you don't have this built into your structure of your organization as a habit and a practice and a muscle, you're going to very quickly become irrelevant as well. So I love that CEO. I've not heard that term before. I'm going to steal that or borrow it. Highly leverage.
Yeah. Sharing is caring. Have it, take it out there, use it, because
it's the sharing. Here we go again. So I believe when we think about those things, if we, for example, if you build a business case around a project you're going to go do to improve experience, and you say this is worth X dollars, the cost of not doing something is worse, because not only are you already losing customers, but the longer that goes on, the longer you're going to lose customers and employees, right? So cost of inaction is also expands rapidly, just as if you had an ROI that was going to give you great results. Not acting on it will give you worse and worse and worse and worse later on, downhill all the way.
Yeah, I love how you exemplify that. I think it's, and we talked a little bit about this before we started the recording of how we in Norway and probably in the Nordics and Europe as well, we look to the US, and if you may not have come that much further than us, but you have so many more examples to choose from and to pick from and to use, both fail wise and also win wise. So I love how you exemplified it, and I think it's I love that you were able to answer that for me. So let's try to move on. I mean, this is it's not a tricky one, but it's an interesting one. I think, we just ask all our guests, like, what is your sort of definition of CX?
I think so this might be a little controversial or just something to think about. We've always called it customer experience, and it used to be, as Michael Henshaw, a friend of mine and a peer of mine would say, I used to have to explain what it was, and now I have to unexplain it, because everybody is using the term customer experience in their title and what they do and everything. So one of the things that when I think about what it means to me in my own words is, I think it is what we're focused on, but I think our discipline is actually experience management. It's that practice of how we look at the experience that's being created, opportunities, what we're trying to enable. And if we think about it, it's about the employee experience and the partner experience and the ecosystem experience, right? We don't do business on our own anymore. But nobody does business on their own. There's a network of people and companies that are behind that. And so we have to really start thinking about, is it just about the customer? And if we're going to do this as a profession, we need to elevate ourselves a little bit outside of, well, everybody already says they're doing CX. Why do I need you? Yeah. It's that kind of piece. So I like to always throw a little wrench in the works and say, what if we could rename what we do to elevate it to more of a discipline?
Yeah, and very much
adding adding the customer experience management part of it, because I think that clarifies it to a lot of people. Like we have, I have a hobby where I look at job ads, right? And they're using it wrong. Because they didn't catch what the customer experience is about. And I think in some ways we're responsible for that too, because we've just said CX and never bothered to explain it.
What it is. And I think that's one of the challenges, not to go down a rabbit hole, but one of the challenges we have as a profession is we complain a lot that our leaders won't give us the support, we don't get funding, but yet we're not helping them really learn about what this discipline is and the impact that it can have. Because I was talking to Steve the other day, and he said, well, why would I focus on that? I said, well, why do you have your salespeople out in the field? What are they doing? And he said, well, they're trying to get people to sign the contract. Oh, so you're changing customer behavior to engage them further so you get revenue and whatever those things are. Yeah, well, we do that just on steroids. We're trying to really understand and change that behavior, especially behavior that's bad for the organization. People are talking bad about you on social media, or they're getting ready to defect. We can look at defection indicators, see who's going to leave, and rescue those. So we need to start talking their language and getting them to bring on board.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And customer experience management or experience management is a terminology I've at least tried to use very much here in Norway. And very much as Merette's saying, I think I've started calling it CX washing. I think a lot of people are doing, we talk about greenwashing, but I think a lot of people are also doing CX washing. And I don't think they're doing it intentionally. But they're thinking, well, we are customer centric. We write this, we make this fantastic advertisement and these visions and promises that we put on our websites, but they don't actually understand that this also means you have to deliver against what it is you're communicating.
Yeah, I
Yes.
love that. I
Yeah.
love you for saying that, Joanna. And I think these days it's June, it's Pride Month as well. And we're talking about pink washing and people are raising the Pride flag, but what does it really mean? So I love that you call it CX washing. I think that's a great term. We're going to start using that more often.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, moving over the rabbit hole.
Over the rabbit hole, who should own customer experience, do you think, Diane?
I think the leaders should own it.
That they have the accountability or that
Yes.
they own it and then they,
It's like anything else. They don't own, they own the way the organization is supposed to work and achieving the goals of the organization. And guess what? Every single thing an organization does is dependent on the way customers engage with you and dependent on how employees build that organization. So if you're not caring, and by the way, that's your biggest asset and your biggest cost in your brand, right? Your customers are where your revenue comes from, your employees are your largest cost, typically. If you're not caring for the biggest assets of your organization, your experience for your customers and experience of the employees, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's not about your product. It's not about their product. It's about what the product does for people and how they treat their employees and how they build those products to meet human needs. So when I say they should own it, we are the shepherds. We're the ones, the Sherpas, going up the road, following them, making sure they have all they need to do and giving them the picture of what's happening and the why. But they need to own it. They need to be promoting it. Everybody will tell you when you ask, what's the number one problem? Leadership doesn't give me money, or they don't give me attention, or they're not leading this. They're nodding their head. But I often say, it's nobody's responsibility but yours as an experienced leader to help talk to them in their language about how this is relative to the organization and to their success. You got to make it about them. You got to make it about the company, not about what net promoter score you're after.
Yeah. So on that note, what is capturing your attention the most then in today's customer-centric business world with this as a context?
What's capturing my attention? You mean what I'm thinking about?
Yeah, or what is it that you sort of observe in 2024 when it comes to being customer centric?
Yeah.
Like what's going on out there right now?
I think people are lather, rinse, repeat the same thing we've tried to do for years, and they're not seeing success. And part of a book that Michael, who I mentioned earlier, Henshaw, and I just wrote, it's about an experience operating system. What we find is that a lot of times customer experience tends to be a little bit of the frosting on the cake, like we're kind of floating around and we're helping people do things and we're doing a few things here and there. But the organizations that I find that are being very successful, who are making their mark, are those who actually embed it into the way the organization works every day. The tools, the way they make decisions, the resources they use, the skills they give people, how they build it, how they communicate it, all of those things are just embedded. And so the company can't help but do well because it's just part of what they need to do every day. And that's a combination of the carrot and stick, like a little bit of, you need to do this, but also how we build people, bring them along and help them be more successful. And then, as we said, create that great employee experience. So that's what I'm seeing. People they're not operationalizing it, which is part of the reason I wrote the book. Yeah.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it, Joanna?
Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm intrigued because I figure, I know, in fact, that so many people need to read this book, because I think that this is definitively one of the things we are struggling with. How do we operationalize the way that we actually work with customer experience across the different silos or divisions or whatever we want to call it? Or so how can we? Where will we find the book, Diane? On Amazon, I guess.
It's on Amazon. It's called Experience Rules, and part of that experience rules is double entendre. Experience rules means experience is what you should be. It rules. It's the thing that differentiates you from other companies, because products can be commoditized and services can be commoditized very quickly. But also experience rules means you need to have structure to this. This is not going and getting voice of customer, bringing back dashboards and starting a few projects. This is about a way of working. If you think about Intuit, if you think about Apple, you think about those great companies, what do they do differently? We all point to them, but it's because everything they do every day that everyone does is all about the experience they're creating. So you've got to embed it. Yeah.
That is a great segue to one of our questions as well, that says, you know, from your perspective, what are the key attributes of a customer-centric company?
They're collaborative. I think they're agile. I think they pay attention to their employees and the ideas and understanding their employees have with the customers. I think they're missing a lot when they don't see that. I believe that their ability to leverage data in ways that are different. And what I mean by that is it's not just the data, but it's the interpretation of the data from the human perspective and gaining true insights, really using that data, because I find so many are data rich, insights poor. They have a ton of data, but they don't really know what to do with it. So I see that being a differentiator. I also see that they are, the employees are hungry and fed, meaning they want to learn more. They want to be valued. They want all these things. The organization is giving that to them, and it's bringing, elevating their experience, but it's also elevating the customer and the experience that they're having. So those are kind of the signposts of what I look for.
Yeah, I really like the last point, that the employees are like hungry and they're actually being fed. That's really nice, because I would agree. That's like when you see a customer-centric organization must be an organization where the employees are engaged and mobilized. They know how to do it. So
Yes, exactly. And and they don't know. So we said the executives, don't really understand what it is, because everybody will tell you, I think I'm doing customer experience, but I don't know. Can you give me a checklist? I mean, this is how I got started operationalizing. It was like, you want a checklist? Okay. The very first things we did at a company is in their process of how they in their PMO, their project management office, there's stage gates you have to go through, right? You initiate a project, you go through a stage gate to get to the next. Well, one of the things that we did is we simply embedded questions in that stage gate process that said, what's the evidence you have that this is a customer problem? Have you built a business case around, if we fix this, regardless of how we fix it, but if we fix this, what will it do for the organization and for the customer? What's the value the customer is going to get? Not just us, but the customer. So building that into that process, so it was just something people expected and they knew they'd have to answer the question, was kind of the beginning of, oh, that's what we should be doing. Like, it's not going to people and trying to say, you can find this, and they go, get out of my way, I got to go build my product. It was putting it into things that they were required and accountable to. So that's a great example of how we think about getting them to do things differently and just embedding it.
Yeah, it's a great example.
It's like, you're giving the customer a seat at the table, right? In the project. It's like,
because they'd be sitting there asking the same thing. How do you know this is a problem? And that just starts to change the mindset of, oh, I gotta go figure that out, because I know when I go to get this project approved, I'm going to have to talk about that and have baselines and have a business case and know what value it's going to create for the customer. Yeah, just changes things.
And while we're talking about the customer, we're intrigued to know, what is your take on voice of the customer programs? Are they good? Are they?
Well, it depends on good, right? Is it like, but I think back to the same song I was singing. It depends on what you do with the information. One, it depends on the quality of information you're getting and what you're doing with it. I've seen a ton of people go through a lot of hoops to get market research and focus groups and all the information, and they go right back to the data. Well, that's great to know. Data says this, and I don't care. The data is the what. The qualitative information is the why. And I'm afraid we're losing that qualitative information. And I'm afraid we're going to lose. Surveys are going to be a thing of the past because people will start relying on AI to do predictive, and we're totally going to lose that human element. Really concerned about that.
Can you elaborate that a little bit more? Sorry.
Yeah. So if you have AI that knows by behavior and by comments on social and can use that information to predict what a person's going to do, that behavior, what are we after? We're after what they're going to do as a result of how they feel. Then it's going to make assumptions because it's great information to know, but if we don't have intuition, if we don't have that connection, if we don't really understand that human element, it's not going to come to bear. So great example of it. If you were, Disney went through this before. They asked people in a survey, when you're at the Disney theme park, would you like salads and healthy food? Well, of course, everybody said yes, right? It's like, oh, of course, I'm going to be really good when I go on vacation. They built this restaurant at the park, closed it a year later because nobody's going to eat healthy when they go on vacation. Like, so that no matter what the data tells you, you have to connect to the people and really understand the psychology and the psychographics behind what they're telling you. So when you say voice of customer, it's going to morph and change. My caution, we shouldn't lose that ability to really have a conversation with people.
Yeah, and people will say one thing and then they will do something else. And the reason for that is that we have emotions. We get triggered. Yes. So, you're not going to want salad in the theme park if you're a little mad or if you're a little angry or you have low blood sugar. Then you're going to go for the burgers and the hot dogs.
Yeah,
right?
And if I'm on vacation, I'm like, I'm on vacation. I'm going to eat what I want. I'm regimented all the time. I'm letting go. Right? I'm going to have the beer or the big 2-pound burger.
I've always thought that, the information that you get from surveys, from asking people, what would you think, or like how the questions that ask them in one way or another, what would you do if, right? We should use that to do the advertisement, but then to make them actually fall in love with the product, you need to look at behavior analysis and not just what they say that they would do. So, I mean, all the insight comes in handy, but it's a matter of how you use it and how, like you said, it has to be insight and not just data.
Yeah, like Henry Ford learned, if I ask people if they wanted a better car, or the faster car, they just they wouldn't. The whole point behind it is, I can't remember the phrase of it right now, but the whole point is that people don't really know what their unmet needs are.
Exactly.
They really don't know. Like all of us think about it. You guys have had this situation. You see a new product come on market and you go, God, I should have had that idea. I've struggled with that for so many years, and somebody came up with a solution for that. I'm like, there you go. You don't know what you need until somebody thinks about it differently.
Yeah.
So that's
why we have Airbnb, we have Uber, we have the people that come to your house to change the tires on your car right there. You don't have to move anywhere.
Exactly.
And you never thought, and that's, I think it's a lot about challenging the status quo. And sort of, if it works, we still need to find a way to not maybe fix it, but just improve it. And John Stills from the UK talks a lot about this, right? How you need to stay relevant. So, rule number one, you have to have a relevant product, and then you have to have customers that fall in love with you. But they're going to fall out of love if your product stops delivering.
And it doesn't meet their needs, right? I laugh at this. I have when I do a presentation, we talk about innovation. I'll start with a boombox. Do you guys remember boomboxes where you had this huge thing you carried around, right? And then you went to a Walkman, and then you went to an iPod, and then now we have these things that go in here, and pretty soon it's going to be a chip in it, right? You're listening to music on the go. The same thing has to happen. The same outcome needs to be there. It's how you get there. And so I think people are underestimating what innovation is going to be needed to be agile and find those problems to solve. But I worry that we're going to lose touch with the human because everything is going to become a digital interaction.
And again, you're giving me the perfect segue to the next question, because that is
maybe later.
I mean, this is awesome. It's like we're following a script, but we're actually not. We have to emphasize that we're not following a script. So nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, even if you've seen the questions. But yeah, we can switch them around and do whatever we want. So what I was going to sort of touch upon, and I think this is really interesting from your perspective as well, both because you live in a different part of the world from us, so things may be going on there that we don't see here. So I would like to know, in what ways do you think technology has transformed the customer journey or even the experience entirely? And what do you believe the future holds? So it's actually two questions.
That's technically two questions, yes. I always, since early in my career, when I was working at an enterprise transformation project, I recognized that there was this huge divide between the business and IT. And so one of the things that I approached the CIO, who happened to be a woman, in a very male-driven company, I approached her and I said, if we need to figure out how to make this work, otherwise this throwing over the fence thing isn't going to work. If we're going to redesign the way customers interact with us and rebuild a lot of what we're doing, processes and how the sales team goes to market and all the things we were doing, if we don't do that aligned, it's going to show up, and it's going to show up as bad experiences. We'll have tech that doesn't work or doesn't meet their needs. We'll have frustrated business people who say, oh my gosh, it's going to take 3 years for you guys to make a change to the website kind of thing. There's definitely this rub. And so I see technology done well. They're really supporting each other, that we're building the experience and we're enabling it with technology. And the important part of that is making sure that the power play, what I call the power play is this experience management team and the IT team are really the only teams in the organization who have a holistic purview of what's happening. Okay, now you might see other companies, other parts of the organization do, but not the way that we do. We understand what's happening from the perspective, and that the technology understands the data and how the technology is supporting it. By bringing those two things together and bringing the outside customer voice in and bringing the best technology options from the IT, that allows us to partner to build the best experiences we can. If we don't overcome that divide and those two teams don't work together, it ain't going to be pretty, I guess is what I say. It ain't going to be pretty. What do I expect in the future? I think technology is going to be a difficult child to rear the way that it's coming now, because it's coming so fast and so furious. And so I often think about the movie WALL-E. Do you guys know the Disney movie WALL-E?
Yeah.
Where everything is taken care of for people for them. All they're doing is floating around in these things, or all overweight, because everything's taken care of for them. I don't want technology and moving the experiences forward where we lose touch with the human element. Again, back to the human element. If we allow technology, yes, leverage it, yes, use it, yes, it's important, but we all know at the end of life, I worked in hospice for a long time. At the end of life, people don't want to spend more time on their phone. They want to spend it with people. They want to spend it with people they care about. And we can't forget that as we're designing experiences, that we forget the human, because we're starting to see research that's coming up telling us that human beings feel disconnected from brands. That's why they switch so frequently. Oh, I don't care about that company. I can buy this from anywhere, because you've not given them a reason to stay with you.
And I also think, I love the answer to the questions. And I think also, I hope at least, and looking at my children, they are not, just getting married. They are 6. So, they are already learning so fast, and they can manage, give them an iPad and they can sort of hack into any company. I assume, if not now, but very soon, they just crack the code. But you also see how they are longing to sort of spend quality time. They will come, so still they're young, but they will come, they will sort of lean into, they will sit on your lap. They're going to need that snuggle. And I think if we're not there for that, if we sort of just leave them, and also, you know, ourselves in mind as well, like if I don't look up from my phone when those moments happen,
Right.
and I just hope that, you know, the next, or this generation and the coming generations, you know, have that same, that we don't lose track of that point of view, that we stay human.
Exactly.
And I love, again, I have to refer to John Sills, who, at least every time I've listened to him, he ends it by saying, if in doubt, be human. And I think it's, you know, embrace technology, but stay human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think thinking about technology too, and how fast it's going and how it impacts our lives. Like my kids laugh at me because when I did my first master's thesis, I did it on key punch cards. You guys don't mind, I don't even know what those are.
Yeah. I know what those are.
I've used
And
them.
a mainframe, you know, it was like, and then a TRS-80 booting from a 5 1/4 inch floppy drive. Like they laugh at me. And I tell them, I say, I wasn't born with the iPhone in my hand. There was no phones. Thank goodness my parents couldn't track me doing anything. Yay, win for no tech. But I say, I can't wait until you're older and your kids turn 10 and they're laughing at you because you carried a phone in your hand. Like, you don't know where technology is going. And we don't have people who are really, there's a lot of people that are thinking through how this is going to impact us, but we don't know where technology is going, especially with AI. And we don't know what it's going to be like 10 years from now. So planning to really get ourselves knowledgeable about what it can and can't do and shouldn't do is one of the things that we need to think about.
Really good point. I
Go
have
on,
to
Johnny.
say, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say that I actually read only today. I didn't see the percentage, but it was a really high percentage of people actually are more than ever keeping their telephones on silent. And I'm one of those. I've very often got my telephone on silent. And they was talking about why is the reason for this? It's because we need to remove ourselves from the always on experience. So I think that I think we're seeing a desire and a willingness to sort of try and remain more human.
And I'm laughing because it's only 10 years ago we paid like loads of money to have like the coolest ringtones. We used to download them and pay for them, right? And now we just put our phone on silent.
Yeah,
that's how fast it moves.
Yeah,
it's and while it's a great crutch, and you know, thank goodness for it. You know, people who get in wrecks, you know, it notifies you. I mean, there's all kinds of wonderful things about it, but I don't think our over reliance on it and designing things for customers that require them to use that. I always tell people when they're designing, I say, what if it were your mom using that? How would you design it? You can't design for the whiz bang digital age only. You can, but they have patience about like this. So you're going to have to figure out what's next pretty quickly. You also have people like myself and, you know, my kids who are now like, okay, I need to call somebody and I can't find an 800 number. Great example of this. One insurance.
It's also been,
they were that's all right. They were talking about their deceased accounts, and because it's a mutual fund company, and people who are calling in because somebody has passed away, and they're like, well, we could just put that online. I'm like, I think you should think about what you just said. I think if I just lost somebody and I'm calling you about either taking that insurance policy or figuring out what I need to do with what's happened, I really don't want to do it digitally. Maybe, but I really probably would rather talk to somebody. I'll say I'll do it digitally, but that there's no connection there in the moment of need for the human, right? You think about that.
And also, I mean, there are still being born people that are going to grow up and be non-digital. I mean, we see it. This is not an age thing. We have 80-year-olds in Norway who are surfing on their iPhones and being on Snapchat. And my dad is one of them, actually. Now, he's not that digital, but still he manages, right? And as opposed to other 80-year-olds who don't. But then you have the 15, 16-year-old. They prefer picking up the phone picking up the phone and calling someone. So I think we will be fooling ourselves if we think that the generation that wants everything offline is dying, because no, we need to provide analog and present services, even if we can digitalize a lot of it as well. So we're going to have to move on because we're going to wrap up soon. I do want to see if we can try to make 2 more questions. And one of them is, can you provide, or do you have any good examples of a company or an organization or anyone basically who has exemplified great CX, like kick-ass CX, or CX rules?
I think from a perspective of like a client or somebody that I do business with, like that personally I do business with. So I'll tell you that Chase, I've been a Chase customer for a long time. And one of the things that emotionally engaged me with them, and they're making, I think, lots of strides in this and are really focused on it. I was driving in Texas and they called me out of the blue and validated it was them and, had all my information. So I was sure it was them. But they called me and said, "Where are you, Miss Magers?" And I said, "Well, I'm in Texas near Katy, Texas on a highway." And they said, "Well, your credit card's in Paris and you're obviously having a wonderful time there." And I was like panicked for a moment. I said, "My credit card is in Texas?" And they said, "Yeah, somebody duplicated your credit card multiple times and they're spending money in Paris." And before I could say a word, they said, "Don't worry. We're calling to figure out where you're going to be tomorrow because we know you travel a lot and we want to overnight a credit card to you. We've already canceled all your other cards. We just want to make sure you had money. Is there anything you need today as it relates to that? If I tell you, here's all the things that are going to happen in the next couple of days. Are you okay with that? Just making sure." No, wow. I said, "I'm fine. Thank you." It just took all that angst and emotion out of mine. So when I think about companies that do that well, anytime anybody tells you about a good or bad experience they've had, the first thing they do is talk about their emotion around the experience. That's what tells me there's an organization that really cares and they get it, that they have the kick-ass experiences.
And it is Maya Angelou all over again, right? People are not going to remember what your company said they would do, but they're going to remember what your company did in a situation like that. So it's applicable.
Especially when you have a negative situation that you need to recover from. It makes all the difference in the world. Like Starbucks, when I go to Starbucks, I go there a lot. When they do make a mistake, they say, "Don't worry about it. Just keep the drink if you want to. And oh, by the way, we're going to give you a free, meal or whatever. Pick some pumpkin bread out of there. And here's a coupon to come back. And we're sorry you had the problem." Like, my bank account.
Did they ever get your name right?
Oh yeah. But you know what? They pay. Here's a great example of the level of detail they go to. If you've noticed, they write your name on the cup, right? They write it across. They write it catacorner, right? They don't write it straight across. They write it this way. And the reason that they do that, and they train their people to do that, is because it's more informal if you write it this way across the cup than straight across.
Oh, really?
Just those subconscious things that you just don't think about. The way that organizations think through that makes it like, oh, they're just writing my name, usually in cursive, if you still know how to do cursive. My kids won't, but all those small, minute details that you don't register with your brain. My husband called it the lizard brain. It picks up on it and stores it for later. You don't pay attention.
It's funny that you mentioned the writing, though. I was just going to say real quickly before the final question that, I somehow, and I've used this example in when I've held speeches as well about, customer experience, that Starbucks, that the employees were trained to write your name wrong so that you would sort of take a picture of it and post it on Instagram because that would mean advertisement for them. And that they actually do it for fun. Like they do it as a gimmick to like always never get the name totally correct. Like they will always miss a letter or misspell it or something like that. Yeah. But I don't know if it's true. It's just a sort of like a story that's been wandering.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, just to say, we're not sponsored by Starbucks, but it's a great example, and I love both the taste and the Starbucks.
I give them a lot of my money.
Then we would just like to. We've got one question left, Diane. Sorry, and we're intrigued to find out what your thoughts are.
You did that subconsciously. Did you know what she just said? Write my name differently. You just said my name wrong. Did it?
I did it subconsciously.
And then she just
carried it. How did that happen?
I don't know. Freudian slip, I guess. Anyway, sorry. Sorry to just.
Yeah.
Keep going,
The
Joanne.
last question. The last question. So this is a question that we really love. If you were the one trying to secure funding for customer-centric improvement initiatives, what is the first thing that you would do?
Well, I talked about this earlier. I would understand the value that a different experience was going to create for the customer and the employee and the brand, and quantify that so that we understand what we're doing, why we're creating things, why we're going to change this, so that we know the outcomes for everyone involved.
Great. Yeah, and you did answer it actually before, but it's I think it sums it up quite nicely, and I think it's all about the value, isn't it? About understanding what people need, and then that leads us. I mean, we keep talking about customer experience, but we also talk more and more about human experience, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about the jobs to be done and all of that. And
it's it exactly. And you think about what we were just talking about. Any company that saves me time has my business. Anybody who guards my money well, like Chase did, has my business. Anybody who recovers when they make a mistake or doesn't argue with me about this charge on a credit card, they just say, it's fine, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. It's all taken care of. Those are the companies I want to do business with. It is all about that emotion. And that
simplifying life.
Yeah. Yeah. The value of not having, like, I don't know if you know this, but we spend more time as human beings avoiding negative situations than we do finding positive ones.
Yeah.
So if you haven't figured out, emotions are important and they really drive how people interact with your organization. So
Diane, again, if people want to read your book, CX Rules, go on Amazon.
Experience Rules.
Sorry, that's a bad mistake. Now I'm getting confused.
Now you're doing.
There it is.
Yeah. It's on Amazon. I really think and it's also for leaders too. We wrote it so that executives, when they read it, it's very specific about what is it, the things we do. What is it? Why is it important? Questions to ask yourself and your organization, things to avoid, and steps to take, like very almost recipe style. So hopefully it will help some of the leaders also learn a little bit more about what we need to do. That's the goal.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to order it straight away.
Very good. And also, if anybody wants to follow you or even reach out to you, LinkedIn is the place, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we will drop a link to Diane's LinkedIn profile in the show notes. We're going to have to wrap up. It's been such a great honor having you on our little show.
Thank you.
And there's also going to be an event. It's going to be in Dallas, US. So I don't know, around October, was it?
Mid-October. Yep, the Women in CX conference will be here in the Americas, we say, because it's going to be Southern and Northern. But yeah, we're looking forward to getting together and figuring it out, continuing to push the wheel and make the motor run and experience.
Yeah. So I am personally wanting to sort of have everyone out there listening to go and find Diane's profile and also check out Women in CX and the events that they do. It's a wrap for today, guys. Thank you so much again, Diane. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you both.
My pleasure.
You have been listening to the CXPod.
Thanks for attending.
Thank you for listening to the CXPod. If you want to reach us, you can always find us on LinkedIn. And please remember to follow us on Spotify and leave a review of what you think.